Digital cinema has spent the last 2 decades creating more controlled images. At the same time, the digital workflow has become sophisticated enough to recreate the texture and response once tied to film. So how did a photographic process built from light and chemistry become something that could be measured and rebuilt inside a computer? In 1973, some of the earliest steps were taken with the film Westworld. To create the gunslinger's point of view, footage shot on 35mm was converted into numerical data, processed frame by frame, then photographed back onto film. For years, Kodak was used both to photograph movies and to create the print shown in theaters. They began developing a way to carry the information stored in a film negative through the digital process. The brightness and color throughout the negative were measured, then translated into numbers a computer could read. That system became Cineon. In 1992, Kodak opened the CineSite Digital Film Center, where a negative could be scanned, altered digitally, then recorded back onto film inside one facility. The following year, Cineon was used during the restoration of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The film was scanned frame by frame so dirt, scratches, and registration problems could be corrected digitally. Once the restoration was complete, the images were recorded back onto film. But once a full feature could be scanned and handled digitally, restoration was only one possible use for the process. In 1998, Pleasantville used digital processing across nearly the entire film. The movie begins largely in black and white before color gradually appears within the town. Sometimes the characters change while the room around them remains monochrome. In other scenes, the color is limited to a single object. The filmmakers needed to isolate color within thousands of frames, something traditional laboratory timing couldn't do without changing the rest of the image. 2 years later, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou scanned its negative and rebuilt the color of the film digitally.
When they were talking about this picture, and they were talking about this Dust Bowl era sort of look, and so then became this whole issue how to alter the image enough to get the look they wanted. Let's go in Mississippi. I said, okay, well, when are you shooting? They said June, July. I said, well, it's going to look just like Ireland.
The landscape had been photographed much greener than the filmmakers wanted, so those greens were shifted toward the dry yellows and browns seen in the finished film. That digital stage placed between the original negative and the final release became known as the digital intermediate, or DI. It gave filmmakers far more precise control than traditional laboratory timing, but the image on the grading monitor was still not exactly what the audience would see when it got to theaters. The theatrical print added its own contrast and color, which meant a shot could change after the digital grade was finished. Post-production facilities solved this with film print emulation LUTs, or lookup tables, which digitally reproduce the color and contrast response of a particular film stock. A LUT works like a translation. It reads the color and brightness values in an image, then converts each one into a corresponding output value. The physical print still created the final result in theaters, but the LUT allowed filmmakers to anticipate the result while they were grading. For the first time, a computer was reproducing the expected behavior of film before the physical print existed. By the late 2000s, film-inspired grading tools were becoming available outside major laboratories and custom post-production facilities. In 2007, Magic Bullet Looks brought those treatments to a much wider editing audience. Its presets could push footage toward familiar film styles, though the software was built for creative look design rather than the precise recreation of a stock or laboratory process. At the same time, larger productions were using custom systems to reproduce much more specific characteristics. On Shutter Island, colorist Ivan Lucas created custom LUTs inspired by Kodachrome and the ENR silver retention process. These treatments drew from techniques cinematographers had previously achieved through their choice of film stock and chemical processing. Instead of recreating those results inside a laboratory, the production could build them into the digital grade. As digital cinematography became more common, filmmakers needed new ways to shape footage captured on digital cameras. Manufacturers responded with formats that preserved more image information before the final contrast and color were applied. In 2010, ARRI released the Alexa. Its image gave cinematographers and colorists the flexibility to use print emulation and other film-inspired rendering techniques within a digital production. Film emulation could now shape an image that had been digital from the moment of capture. A few years later, FilmConvert began with a simple problem. Its New Zealand post-production team was working with filmmakers who wanted to shoot on film, but many couldn't afford the stock processing or scanning. Digital cameras like the Red One were making production cheaper, although the color coming from those cameras didn't always resemble what those filmmakers wanted. So the team began testing film stocks and digital cameras side by side.
What we're doing today is we're setting up a test that allows us to actually test the film simulation that we've built versus actual film.
Physically models film stocks, so we match a film look from a film stock directly to the CCD on a digital camera. So we can get it exactly right, whereas most other software just provides a film look. We can actually make it look exactly like it comes off the film because we are tailoring it to each individual piece of hardware.
They photographed controlled charts, scanned the film at Weta Digital, and compared those results with footage from different cameras.
There's been a significant learning curve as to how you deal with red, how you deal with film, how we profile film, how we profile cameras. There's been a significant R&D process that we've had to go through.
The test showed that each camera reproduced color differently. Because of that, FilmConvert built profiles for individual cameras and recording formats before applying the measured characteristics of the film stock. They also incorporated changes during printing along with grain taken from film. By 2012, filmmakers could use that process without paying for a full film workflow or building custom color pipelines. For smaller productions, it offered a more affordable way to get closer to the look they had in mind, using the digital camera they had the budget for. Then in 2015, cinematographer Steve Yedlin released his display prep demo.
Dominant narrative in the imaging community is that our selection of camera type or film stock type is a major leverage point in controlling the photographic look.
Yedlin compared 35mm with the ARRI Alexa and showed how a separate rendering process could shape the final color, contrast, and texture.
I believe that's a problematic presumption that is not supported by the evidence.
That work later became central to Knives Out. Knives Out was photographed digitally on the ARRI Alexa Mini using Zeiss Master Prime lenses. Its final appearance came from Yedlin's pipeline. The system handled different characteristics of the image separately.
Really?
One process controlled color and tone, while others added grain, halation, gate weave, and changes to the texture of the frame. In the restaurant sequence with Marta beside the window, the color rendering controls the relationship between the bright exterior, her skin, the warm interior, and the darker areas of the room. The other physical characteristics are then added after that foundation. Yedlin built the image piece by piece, drawing on years of tests comparing film, digital cameras, and the way each one was prepared for display. By this point, film emulation was no longer limited to copying the color of a stock. It could control the color, contrast, texture, and physical behavior of a digital image, from capture through final presentation. Most of us aren't working with a $100 million budget or a custom color pipeline. FilmConvert gives us an affordable way to use camera-specific film emulation without building that process ourselves. It brings years of testing and profiling within reach of the filmmakers who need it most. And for up-and-comers, that can make the difference between having a look in your head and getting much closer to it on screen. Cineon gave that process a standardized system, and the digital intermediate allowed filmmakers to shape entire movies after the negative had already been scanned. Print emulation helped them predict how that work would appear when transferred back to film. Then digital cameras changed the source of the image. Some filmmakers built custom systems for individual productions, and FilmConvert made camera-specific emulation available to people working with smaller crews and budgets. Filmmakers wanted control over the finished image and a way to carry the characteristics they valued in film into a digital production. A huge thank you to FilmConvert for sponsoring this video and for sharing the history behind their process. If you're interested in trying their film emulations, go to filmconvert.com, use code SAGER10 at checkout to save 10% off your order. I've also included a link in the description. I appreciate you all. If you're enjoying these deep dives into film history, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when I'm dropping my next video. Until next time.